So I'm very happy to say that Monash University is involved in meetings like this. And before introducing the next speaker, let me tell you a story about why it's fun and very practical to travel to conferences with my daughter. Not that she listens now. I was in my sabbatical for the first half of the year in the United States, so I wanted to attend this conference, Solar Physics Division of the American Astronomical Society in Boston. And you know, at these big conferences, they have parallel sessions, and you have to rush between sessions, and I had to drag her along to different places. And then we were a bit late after lunch, so I stepped into one of the sessions and trying to understand if this is the session I wanted to be in. And then I said, oh, no, let's go out, let's go. And she stopped me and said, this is your session. I said, how do you know about that? And then she replied to me, I've heard a guy speaking, the man speaking, saying the word corona, solar corona. And then she said, that's the word you've been using this morning all the time talking to people. So she listened to, she was listening to what we say, and I'm sure that she's still listening. And I think she had fun this morning with adults playing toys. So it'd be interesting what she would write in her report at school about what women in astrophysics do at conferences, right? Anyway, so I'm pleased to introduce you Professor Matthew Coase from Research School of Astronomy and Astrophysics. And this is a session where we are really going to understand what are the top 5 things to change in our Australian astronomy community, right? So please welcome Professor Matthew Coase.
Thanks very much, Alina. So, unlike every other person who stood up here over the last 2 days, I have no particular qualifications or insights to offer, and therefore it's fortunate that this session is mostly about you and not about me. Despite not having those particular insights or qualifications, I do lead an astronomical organization, and I do want to be a male champion of change. And so I need your advice. We have seen and heard a remarkable amount of information over the last couple of days. I am staggered by the sheer quantity of facts and analysis, anecdote and opinion that has been laid before us. Elizabeth has just made a clarion call for action in this area. We have an awful lot of diagnosis, and we have some suggested cures for our ills. But what is the treatment for the particular case of the Australian astronomical community? So the homework that was provided for this session adds some additional information and ideas to the mix that we've already heard. There are 2 reports from McKinsey and Company, which I hope many of you at least have read and digested. They are very interesting because they provide a very different perspective and a very different culture to our own, because they also provide some clear ideas for action and some good evidence for what works and what doesn't work. Now, this session is called the Top 5 Things to Change in Australian Astronomy, and certainly I will be asking you to identify the problems and to rank the issues. But more importantly, what I would like you to be doing is to help identify some solutions and to rank those. Please don't focus on the 5. The 5 is just a small number to cope with. Feel free to come up with 10 or 2 or whatever suits you. Feel free to rank them by what you feel is their underlying importance and impact, or you may choose to rank them by the order in which you feel results may come, putting low-hanging fruit first. I don't mind. I don't mind whether they are cultural or institutional or individual or whatever. What I do want them to be is definite and actionable, so that people like me in this community can take them, go away, and actually implement them. Please keep it, therefore, direct and simple, and please also remember the adage that the best is the enemy of the good. In other words, we're not looking for perfect solutions here. We are looking to make things better. And as we've heard over the last couple of days, we have a lot of room to work. So what I'm going to do now is to ask you to break up into groups of about 6 to 8, roughly 1 table's worth. If your table has relatively few people, if you've only got, say, 5 on your table, as here, could I suggest that another table of 5, perhaps over there, spreads out? I think a smaller number of tables of about 6 to 8 would be better than many more tables, because at the end, I would like to collect together some of these reports. So the process will be that your table will get together, that you will discuss all the information we've heard over the last couple of days, including the homework material, but not only that, everything is grist for our mill, that you will identify what you see as the top 5 things needing change, and then also the top 5 solutions. As I said, I'm not too fussy about how you rank them or anything else, but come up with clear, definite actions targeting specific problems. When you've done that, or while you're doing that, please identify someone in the group to be the amanuensis, writing down these things, and someone to be the spokesman, the person who is going to report these things. Please, they don't need to be the same person. Do it however you like. But at the end, I will ask your speaker to stand up and actually report a couple of those things. I will actually collect the written down list of all the things you do, because that will be a very useful resource that we will, I hope, collect and perhaps even publish after the end of this meeting. But because there are so many tables and our time is limited, I'll only be able to ask you for 1 or 2 each. So think about the most important ones, and please give me a succinct summary. So if we're going to stick to time, as I believe we should, we've got 40 minutes. So I'm going to split that time in half. 20 minutes to talk about the issues and come up with your solutions, and then 20 minutes to go round the room, and I will try and give you 2 minutes each, roughly, if we can have 10 tables. I'm not sure if we look like we've got a few more than that, but roughly 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes each in order to summarize your outcomes. But please write down all the things that you have, because we will collect those at the end of the session. Right, your time starts now. Thank you. Okay, I hope you're all wrapping things up now. Note down that last brilliant idea. Give your spokesperson a moment to gather their wits. So, Celine has very kindly offered to try and capture some of this on the big screen so that we can see it in real time. As I said before though, at the end of this session, if the amanuensis in each group could bring their notes or email their groups, their notes rather, to Celine or one of the other organisers, that would be great. We would like to collect those. Okay, Aidan, you're about as far away as anyone. Can you see that font? Is that big enough? Good, thank you. All right. Can I therefore start with the group over here? You've got 1.5 minutes to summarise your pearls of wisdom. A moment of silence. I did say you've got to pick two.
But not just two. I think the big thing is that we need to start applying the same focus that we've been applying to the diversity of the astronomy research area into the allied fields of astronomy instrumentation, software, and engineering. There are various ways to go about that, but I think clearly maybe not seeing the full extent of the issue in the allied fields to do the research.
Well, that would be very popular with our amanuensis here.
Another one would be, we talked a lot about the current selection criteria process for recruitment and how being so numerically based and not really multi-dimensional enough. We need to try and broaden that such that it's still consistent with employment law and so forth, but enabling us to get past the unconscious bias that we are becoming familiar with. Therefore, we need, sometimes it could even be a simplification of the selection criteria to make them more general, less purely quantitative, so that we can begin to consider other factors that are not necessarily so tangible, as we continue to insist upon as being purely about.
So I can see the value of that, but I think it would be helpful, again, putting my hard hat on as to how do I use this. If your group could think a little bit about specifically how that could be done, that would be useful while we're going around the others.
We do have an example.
Oh, good. Thank you. Hold on.
Just one last item that did come up was trying to find ways to couch the problem, not just particularly men, and including, say, actually not even about this stuff, it's not part of the problem. If we can couch the problem in terms of scientists can understand, in terms of modelling, peer-reviewed literature, case studies, and so forth, maybe that will help get the message across and to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Okay, next group here, Shaheen.
Yeah, but interesting. I think the main idea that we had was focusing on addressing the problem of the difference in the price of the word tuning, this percentage of prices that come with tuning. And I think a great way of approaching change that would be make a threshold that 30% of those nominated are nominated will be no prize given. Of course, there will be issues with that, and if only want a university or institution that you want to have in person, how you actually make those numbers add up. And that's something that can be discussed if this is being implemented. But I think as you said, with this help with zero and and I think that is a great way of starting to see the shift in the events, because you must nominate women in order for you to even exist.
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing I'm looking for, because that's very prescriptive. It's clear what I or other people need to do. So that's great.
And then I think someone stressed something that you mentioned yesterday. If, as an institution, you want to have women represented on committees, or decision committees, or hiring committees, the idea of reducing responsibilities in other areas to compensate the increased work would be more beneficial to actually get that representation without the workload being overwhelmed.
Thank you. Right, next group. David.
So one problem which was discussed at length here is that women often doubt themselves more. This is sometimes called imposter syndrome in a related context. And related to that, overconfident people who give off loud bravado can accentuate this problem by establishing a culture in that way. And finally, men are less likely to show their weaknesses, won't admit when they're unsure what they're doing as frequently as women would. So, a cluster of related problems. The solution that we, a couple solutions we came up with, it is helpful to hear the insecurities of your peer group and people at a higher level as well. So perhaps if this could happen from time to time, or someone at a senior level who's perceived as successful would state some of the insecurities we had along the way that would normalize insecurity, and not give off the impression that everybody is successful. It's always 100% confident.
Well, I certainly feel like an imposter up here on the stage, so here's step one.
And also safe spaces for sharing concerns, fears, insecurities. Look at that as a related solution to that problem.
Sorry, I don't think we heard that, David. Say that again.
All right. Safe spaces for sharing concerns, /fears, /insecurities.
Safe spaces.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have another one, or was that it?
So we're supposed to mention two comments?
Two, yeah.
Oh, all right. So, the next one is kind of generic, but should be mentioned anyways, even though I suspect it's on almost every list. Is the lack of parental leave and access to childcare. That's a problem, and the solution is parental leave guaranteed as part of every graduate program and postdoctoral program in Australia, as well as access to daycare, including during conferences.
Okay, so that one I think is a little harder for heads of departments to take up on their own, but certainly a very useful goal to agitate for as a group. So, next.
So one of the problems that we saw was that there's a big gap between women and paid and it's really hard for them to get hired to permanent position. So some places it's in this one, you know, like university, like so each department can have targets, perhaps over 5 years, and they go into the and like this is a lot of
That will certainly motivate. Sorry, I'm sorry. Celine, did you not hear that? Sorry, if you speak up a little.
Sorry. Okay, I'll eat the mic.
Yeah, eat the mic. Quite right.
So we propose that they set department targets, and if they don't meet that, over some period of time, that they lose out on some money.
So setting targets for numbers of women in the department and the faculty at different levels,
and
with actual monetary penalties if they're not over some appropriate period.
And we had some mixed feelings about just having a women position, like advertising was overloaded, so I won't reject that. But another idea that we had was succession planning. So if you have, like, it's kind of like mentoring, so the prominent male people would identify strong females and help them climb up the
Absolutely. Male champions at a personal, individual level, yes. Right.
And then one other issue was the lack of awareness and acceptance that this is still an issue. Obviously, we're here today, so we acknowledge that this is an issue, but there's some people in our departments who are not here, essentially, from so just so that people are awareness and create a better environment in the entire So one idea was to build some profiles of some categories, so maybe have some routines or some role modeling, and just have more information sessions like this, but at a small scale.
Well, in fact, to make it more specific still, perhaps the people who've been the spokespersons here should go back and ask their department chairs to give a 5-minute presentation on results from the Women in Astronomy workshop in the departments. I think that would be a good thing for everyone to hear, because as you pointed out, it's the people who are not here who most need to hear the message. Right, next, Sarah. Sarah, right up close, it's not very loud. Celine's struggling to hear.
So, yesterday, I said this morning, people struggle, people with family responsibilities struggling to travel to conferences or meetings for that reason. And there are a couple of solutions to that. One is access to funds to solve that in general, because the solution to that issue then they're at the meeting, and then home, pretty much take the family with you, with not really one solution fits all, so funds is the answer. In particular, I'm not sure if this is the case, but if it's not, we should ask the ARC whether we can use ARC funds to assist with these issues, because we want ARC money to be used to get this out of the people.
Another issue that's come up there when we've tried to implement something like that at RSAA is fringe benefit tax is a problem.
Yes. And one feeling is that yes, it's an issue, it should be done. I'd like to have it, yes. That's not easy answer.
And item 2.
Related to that is the issue of exposure. You travel to increase your exposure. What other things can you do? Earlier brought up that CSIRO have a fantastic shadowing opportunity, so you can shadow an executive organization. Most of us, we probably couldn't shadow somebody in our department, but we could shadow somebody from the university in an organization, and we're going to broader organizations. I felt very excited by that. I think it's a really neat idea that it's not too difficult. And related conferences, organizing conferences. Anybody organizing a conference, if you get a decent gender mix and invited speakers, shame on you. that take you 5 minutes if they're back to your organisation to tell them this is their job. It's not hard. It's an opportunity that you have to give exposure to people in the community.
Thank you, Sarah. And in the group behind you, who is speaking?
There's on side group. Two of the ones, that people that
sorry, could you speak just a little bit? Thanks, yeah.
We talked a lot about the difficulties and the success measure with family care responsibilities, especially when they have been recognised. And that ties into the problem of this, the modern ideal of scientists that sort of gets out there. So some of the examples, some of the things suggested as possible things we could do. One, to make sure that our organisations have ability to clauses in the promotion or the application processes to make sure those are strong and detailed, to publicise those, so that on one hand we train the organisations and people about how to write those pieces, about what to say and how to suggest, how to develop their own performance in a way that is fair, and also to build models for communities and to train assessments and how to fairly make those sorts of assessments. And there was an example of the European organization, one of the is to provide a standard code whereas if you have a child, effectively take 2 minutes after the but that people are trained is actually to piece it out and do some research to how we can different ways of access and that has to be fixed. And a third aspect to it is provides some selection for when people making forward. It's not a blind amendment for because about how to manage and how to talk about the executives around them so that it's not going to get slow. Yeah. The other
Sorry, could you just repeat that last one?
The last one was to build into what the mentoring and support programs we have for younger academics, how to present information about themselves as carers so that it seems not a deficit line, but something high and acknowledge is something that you just naturally include not really relevant. The next issue is
last one.
Last one is childcare.
Right.
Childcare support. Childcare support is a good one. So on-site childcare, provide access to childcare, providing all pressure organisations and organise conference to provide childcare. Funds to make funds available so that people can access childcare conferences. And what was the first one? To have like a technician or assistant during your leave or return to work phase. And some organisations do that already, but it would be great to see that expanded.
Okay, thank you. Next group, just in the middle here.
So I think that some of our individuals touch on
Yes, I'm afraid the later groups are going to find our ideas being taken away. But we're short of time, so go right over them. Right?
In regards to the physical face at events such as this, and also with larger conferences, it's important to have those within the speakers, but also in the church and facilitate the conversations and approachable environment for everyone. And to take track of what and future histories, especially as long-term future development as they are. have more diversity. And I feel like something might be considered biology versus
Okay.
and with the rest, I'm most major there's a lack of female nominations for the research being provided. That's definitely something we can address.
Since one of the few areas we're strong in, we've got plenty of female students, so there's absolutely no excuse for not for nominating. I agree. Thank you. Down the back. Yes. Perfect.
Okay, so first idea was the slightly more kind style kind of figure, but the idea was that instead of the current postdoc model where you think about it be some kind of affiliation of nationally network of contacts. So for instance, the person who would find it's which would allow you to kind of provide something which you could be helpful for the mindful kind of
Congratulations. I think that's the first idea I've not heard before. Well done.
And I guess the second one is just really not only because it's fair and helpful, but also that it men take up, say, training people, flexible work hours, and that becomes
Very good. Thank you. Next group, who have we got? Oh, hi there, yes. Carol. Yep, you're on.
Right, so kind of think about the top two were, some of them have already been said, but anyway.
Feel free to skip those, go straight to the ones that haven't been mentioned. Sorry.
I think, this personally, but I think we must for some of the others, the two-way problem, and also the related issue of the sort of appointment to basically what we're talking about as well. And then a solution to that is applying for long grants. So 5-year grants instead of 3-year grants. So just adding on to what they were saying. I think this is what I mean. But okay, I don't think there's too much overlap here, so I'll just go ahead and say what we have worked up to. So how to get women or anyone in parents visible nationally and internationally within this network. So there was I mentioned about childcare support and so forth, but also funding. What sort of funding we can get so that we can bring our partners with us and take care of the children, and also encouraging streaming of conferences. Video conferences.
Yeah. So there needs to be flexible solutions. Sometimes it's your partner, sometimes it's a grandmother, sometimes it's a grandfather, sometimes it's hiring a nanny at the place you actually go to. But you need multiple solutions to be able to deal with that. Okay, next table. Who's our spokesperson?
So our conversation mostly focused on the higher policy. We talked about what kind of policy particularly the three things that we included that is active deployment of appropriate applicants to open certified state. This should be done, especially the senior levels as well. By the selection committee to develop. But as well as the community, so not everyone necessarily knows the position of enough. So we see this And we also said that selection itself should be made up to the best diversity. Some call for selection to meet that.
Sorry, could you just try that one again? I think Celine didn't
so I guess just having some sort of way of making it feel more so that I get informed. Some way to
yeah.
and also that case of in case it comes down to two people candidates, so even if they're very similar people, then you can and we also have to work on and we should be encouraged that there are some others that we or should policy about the learning out and that like Sarah but the privacy is policy dependent on.
Okay, thank you very much. Last table, Amanda, have you got anything left to offer us?
Maybe we have one.
Well done. That's a good effort after all.
So one thing you notice that Australian institutes, especially if you're elected, so maybe it comes down to how we define a good leader and how we define what makes a good director. So maybe it's something, maybe it's the wording of advertisements, has to be more very neutral, has to be more flexibility. Maybe all the people on the committee should be attending the workshops. Some objectivity in announcements as well. We also had discussions about everything else, but we thought the leadership issues that would be a big one.
Yes, good point. Well, look, thank you all very much. I see Sarah's hand up. Come on, Sarah, last go. Someone pass her a microphone. Sarah, other Sarah, sorry. Thank you. Is it on?
We'll start thinking about publishing applications. You're not getting applications. Ask yourselves why.
Thank you. Well, look, thank you all very much for those ideas. Celine has tried to capture everything, but she won't have got it all. And furthermore, there will be nuances and variations on the same theme. So we would like to collect your original notes and things. Please either bring them or email them or whatever them to Celine. She'll wave her hand right now. Celine, wave your hand. Please make sure that you get them to her before you go and have your cup of tea. But otherwise, please have a break and we will be back after afternoon tea. Thank you.
Cool.
table, or should we just get rid of it? Well, let's just carry it out of the way. Jeez. So we need 6 chairs, 7 chairs, 6 chairs.
From either side of the screen?
Usually, don't have a table. That's not a bad idea. All right, let's bring the table back. Someone else take it. It's bloody heavy. That's a very good point.
You read the. Oh.
Yeah, it's sort of
Wait, no. I'm sorry. That's the video feed to the broadcast. So what are you doing? Okay. Oh yeah. Move it forward. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. No worries.
So, I think we're going to have Elizabeth up there moderating. We'll have our staff members. So let's see, we have Megan, Aidy, and with Bob. Get this one. Oh, is it Margaret? Margaret. Says
Okay. Margaret, Linda, Aiden.
I meant there to be 5.
Megan and Terry.
So it's 5.
Yeah.
Alright. Let's put that one on the. You need to have it facing. We're okay. 2, 4. Yes, I think we should have a good microphone. Elizabeth up there. Okay.
In particular,
we're going to have you moderate from there. I am moderate. Panel will be there. Yes. Gary pointed out a problem of having females on stage and chairs up, so that's why the table is there. Which I hadn't thought of, but makes perfect sense.
Really good to see you. How's things going with you? Yeah, pretty good. Good. Yeah. Busy. Oh, that's good. Yeah. And someone was telling me they'd been down to something that you've run recently. It was really good. You don't know, so, but yeah.
Yeah, no, we had City.
I caught up with. We spent an hour together in the airport lounge today. We were flying. She was flying to Sydney. I was flying back to Sydney. And actually, I'll go into UN Women next month in New York to talk about maltreatment of change.
Yes, because I called my program.
They want to give some legs. So.
Okay.
I'm from UNSW. Sorry, I don't have a common badge. But I just wanted to mention, maybe we can talk about it during the panel. Although I'm a little bit shy. But is there a way to measure discrimination?
Yeah.
So how can you do it? If you change things, how can you know exactly?
We developed this in your perception of this. So the only way we can say as court judge, so it was your perception. So yeah, we can measure how it will work to you. But now that
It's a clear way to do it.
Hello, so there's wonderful buzz of discussion in the room, but I'm going to break into it to start this session. My name is Fiona Jenkins. I'm the convener of the Gender Institute here at ANU, and we're a very proud sponsor of this wonderful event, which I've been incredibly impressed by over the last 2 days. And I've done similar work as this in my own field of philosophy, and I must say I've never been able to engage such a diverse constituency with the issues in philosophy, so I think you're streets ahead. And I really commend the work that you're doing in this room. The Gender Institute has a double mandate. We both promote research on gender at ANU, but we also try to progress gender equity at ANU. And I think one of the reasons we were very excited to invest in this workshop is that we see it as both directly changing the culture at ANU, feeding into that, but also, of course, influencing the wider field, influencing people at other institutions, including some of the leading agenda-setting institutions that we have represented on this panel. And of course, you know, we're not going to bring about change, any of us individually. It has to come through broad, high-level changes in conceptions of merit and excellence, in images of ideal researchers, but also I think in our conceptions of the purpose and value of research and what the diversity of researchers will bring to that. And there are some very progressive models of that being developed in the EU, in the UK, and I really hope that Australia is not going to lag too far behind these progressive models that are being developed. We urgently need the support of our research leaders in generating the kind of thoroughgoing social changes needed to bring about more ethical conditions in research, and therefore, I think, better scientific outcomes. So let me introduce this very high-powered, illustrious panel to you. First, Dr. Megan Clark at the far end is Chief Executive of CSIRO. Dr. Clark began her career as a mine geologist, moving into management roles to become a Vice President in BHP Billiton. And she's currently chair of the Mining for Development Advisory Board for AusAid and on the Prime Minister's Science, Industry and Engineering Council, amongst other important advisory roles. Professor Margaret Hardy is the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research at the ANU. She's also a director on several boards, including ANU Enterprise and the National Computational Infrastructure. And her research interests are in biological and medicinal chemistry. Professor Aidan Byrne is the CEO of the Australian Research Council, and prior to his appointment to the ARC in 2012, he was the Dean of Science and Director of the ANU College of Physical and Mathematical Sciences. He's been a pioneering researcher in nuclear physics, both in Australia and internationally. Professor Linda Christensen is Vice-Chancellor at Swinburne University, and previously she was the DVC Research and Development at Curtin University, and the inaugural chair of palliative care at Edith Cowan, and she's also served on the NHMRC. And Professor Terry Speed is head of the Bioinformatics Division of Melbourne's Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research. Previously, he also worked at Berkeley and has recently received one of the Australian Prime Minister's prizes for science. And he's also a Fellow of the Royal Society. So this session is going to be moderated by Sex Discrimination Commissioner Elizabeth Broderick, who was introduced to you earlier. So look, please welcome our very interesting panel.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and I want to recognise Fiona's work. The ANU Gender Institute is really one of the leading institutes looking at gender equality issues in Australia. Fiona's been a great leader of that institute, and I really want to recognise the work that you do in promoting gender equality in this country, so thank you, Fiona. And I'm happy to say we've got the gender balance about right, which is great. So we've got a great body of wisdom here, and this is from leaders of institutions that can really change this picture in Australia. So that's why I think the panel's so excited, and it's just a great honour to be here and facilitating the panel. You've heard heaps from me, so I'm going to pretty much straight away turn it over to the panel. So I'll start by asking an introductory question to each member of the panel, just so we can see what the circumstances in their own institution are. But then I really want to quickly hand it over to you, because you've been discussing these issues for 2 days. You've worked out things that may or may not work, and it'd be a great opportunity to put your questions to the leaders of the major institutions in this sector. So Terry, I might start with you. As a leader in this sector who has responsibility for a key institution, the Walter and Eliza Hall, what do you see as some of the major challenges for your institution and 1 or 2 breakthrough solutions?
Okay, is this working? I think, well, firstly, I would say that we've made great progress at what I call low-hanging fruit, and I don't want to several of the things on the list just before are low-hanging fruit, in the sense that a director or a university with money can just say, do it. Our major challenge is still changing the hearts and minds of our colleagues. That shows up most importantly in promotions, in hiring and promoting, because reaching out to everybody who is potentially applicable for the job in question, getting jobs framed, all those issues that were on one of those lists there. That's the really hard thing, because in our medical culture, just sort of tapping somebody on the shoulder and saying, you will be a lab head, you are the right person to succeed with. That's the tradition. Not advertising, not trying to get a gender balanced committee, to get a gender balanced shortlist, to get a gender balanced list of interviewees, just finding the right person, which is typically finding the right man. So that's the really challenging thing, I think, because that requires people to change their hearts and minds, not just throw a bit of money at it. And it's great to throw money at. Sorry, I'm not talking near enough to the microphone. Okay, now you want solutions. That is so much harder. Okay, so I have 4 little things which are not world-changing, but I wrote them down because I thought somebody might say, what are you doing? Well, they're not very exciting. Be very boring. Bang the drum ad nauseum. That I found, I mean, I'm saying it's a guaranteed solution, but if you stop banging the drum, things just slip back. Okay. Same thing, eternal vigilance. Again, if you stop watching, then things slip back. You know, I've been in this business of trying to redress the gender imbalance for about 30 years. And really, the minute the chair changes, okay, got to finish. Naming and shaming. I don't know how often you need to use that, but I think it's a powerful antidote to the tendencies that are out there. When people that you know have a bad record start on their usual stuff, just pointing out their bad record. I mean, it might happen sometime pretty soon that the NHMRC will actually name and shame the institutions under their purview that have good or bad policies. I fully support that. And finally, of course, try to relate what's going on with funding. I mean, if you can actually get a group like the NHMRC to emulate what's happening in the UK, that you'll only get funding from a particular body if you are at a particular level, this will work. I mean, it's a variation on rather crude metaphor when you get them by the short something or others, you get their hearts and minds. Well, I like to think getting some movements like that. They're not going to change the world rapidly, but I'm not sure I know anything that will. Thanks.
Thanks, Terry. I mean, that's some great suggestions there. I absolutely agree. This is a journey characterised by persistence, so eternal influence. Sure. Linda?
Thank you. Well, at Swindon, I've been there just over 3 years now, and I was pleased to know, and I was surprised to know that we have been named by the Workplace Gender Equality Agency for 6 consecutive years as an employer of choice for women. And when I learned that, I thought, wow, the bar must be low. Because we were doing some things well, not to say we were, but I thought, there's lots to achieve. And I'm really happy to learn that the Workplace Gender Equality Agency has seriously with the bar. So if you look, I don't know if we're going to make it this year. We have applied and we're trying hard. But it may be that the number of organizations will drop out of that because the expectations are high, and they ought to be. So we have embarked upon something called the Gender Equality Strategic Action Plan. I won't go through the whole thing with you. But I was asking if you wish to look at the website because it identifies some very deliberate strategies, targets, and goals. We have basically stuck our neck out and said we're going to come and we're going to address it by 2020 by setting some specific targets around gender balance in senior leadership groups, pay equity, where we have female inequities that are occurring and we identify, analyze, and measure. We're looking at improved flexibility for all of our people in the workplace because we know whether it's young families or people with aging partners, elderly parents, we need to be responsive to them as people. We're implementing something new called Children Connect, which is a connections, which is about helping people in their planning phase, male or female, to think about how they're going to stay connected. You often think about this leave, let's say goodbye. What we need to do is stay connected during that years, make sure that they come back. And I guess the other issue that I would think is probably the most difficult to tackle, but the most important is unconscious bias. And that is the language we use, the way we don't conceive our privileging of certain people. And so we are implementing deliberate, me too, unconscious bias training for ourselves in management and leadership roles so that we don't unknowingly perpetuate old practices and biases that disadvantage one group and or other groups, and also not reflecting use of time, because that's really important.
Thanks very much, Linda. It's interesting to see the Workplace Gender Equality Authority. It looked like some of the reporting requirements might be watered right down over the last 6 months. But it was good to see the male champions of change coming out really strongly saying, you know what, gender reporting is not red tape. We need to know whether we're making progress. And if that reporting disappears, then we won't have anything from a national perspective to understand whether we're getting better at this or to provide the evidence base from which we can develop good policy within organisations, but also at a national level. So yeah, but terrific to hear some of those initiatives there. I'll have to add.
Thank you very much. And the ARC is a different organisation from any that we see elsewhere on this panel, because we're a provider of funding for the sector. And a second order influence of gender in this area. And I think the description that we used earlier about the ideal working model is incredibly important. That notion that people have a very strong understanding it's a male measure of outputs in a particular way, at a particular point of career is a very strong barrier all the way through the progression that really works against women. And the ARC is a part of that process, sometimes we contribute to the process too, but more we reflect the sector as a whole. It is very hard to shift things. That's what we learn when you come to a goal. You can start making small change system, but it takes a lot of time. Interestingly, in the first few weeks I took on the job 2 years ago, I went and had a meeting with Brian Gator and Castro, and they said they had an initiative that they wanted all of their appointments part-time. We now look at that in ARC as well, so it's a good idea. We can make small changes like that. An emphasis on relative opportunity. We relaunched our relative opportunity principles this year, but it is a hard task to get panels to think about it. It's an even harder task to get assessors who are deeply entrenched in this ideal model really appreciate what effect being primary carer has as some of the not just the 6 months, the 12 months, the 18 months of maternity, but across the whole duration of an academic career. It introduces a delay that is very hard to take. You've got to really sensitise the assessment. The assessment panels themselves, we've just gone through an exercise of calling the nominations for a college level. Only 28% were for women. And that's probably women. That's an enormous barrier. I'm pleased to say that the new appointment this year is devastating right now, but we have 39%. Some issues like long grants, we're already through all of these changes. The system is actually very, very long grants as well as success rates. Our success rates, again, shorter grant, 2-stage grant application processes. We've got very short 3 rounds by systems. Very vigilant about some knee-jerk changes that we suggest to make it simpler. Really got to process really carefully. There are some interesting numbers about the age profile that really do also make it very difficult for women. In the NIH in the US, this is reflected in the NHS over the last couple of decades, there's been significant aging of the people they support. And so at the moment, the average age for an NIH person in the US is 53, and that's gone up progressively over years. Interestingly, the ARC, the lead investigator on the 46. And that's been that for the last 15 odd years. It's going on for 3 weeks a year, so that's a very slow change, isn't it? But it's still 46. It's not young. Mid-career is 46. Our future fellows, our mid-career program, the average age is 40. Our DECRA program is the early career researchers, the average age is 45. It's a big change in numbers in what the partner in academic career, be it male or female. You've got the set, short term, very, very difficult, and increasingly difficult to add to that. Very difficult.
Yeah, you're right, because childbearing overlaps identically with the time necessary to put in the long hours to build a strong career. So, and in relation to funding, it's good to see also that, you know, when you're looking at how the grants and things are given, that you're actually stripping out unconscious bias, because that's really important. I tell you who's doing that really well is the Treasury. Martin Parkinson has done some great work and stripping out unconscious bias from the performance management system, so in the way he assesses people as well. So no, that's terrific to hear. Thanks very much, Aidan. And I'll hand over to Margaret.
So let me first clarify that Ian Young, Vice Chancellor, would have been here today except he's travelling. He has responsibility for gender equity programs within the university, and in fact earlier this year one of the initiatives he put in place was to establish a committee that would be chaired by himself in terms of rolling out and looking at what we are doing at ANU at this time. So I've been here for just over 2 years. The Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Marnie Hughes-Warrington, has also been here just over 2 years. And I think part of what we have brought to the ANU perhaps is being in the senior leadership of the university, alerting people who are very capable, able, but not always sensitive to the issues that women face, to draw those out and make sure they are on the highest levels of the university's agenda. So 2 things I think that pragmatically we are planning to do this year is, you know, the ANU, for anyone who works here, of course, we know it's a strange beast. Fantastic stuff goes on, and we have trumpets of great things to support gender equity that are occurring, such as the ANU Gender Institute, such as activities such as the forum today. But it's not uniform across the institution. And when you talk to women at different levels, some of them benefit from programs in discrete areas, and some don't navigate or don't have mentors or supervisors who are aware of what's in place to tap them on the shoulder and direct them. We also, I guess, had a very candid discussion recently at our university executive that we do a lot of talking, and we have a lot of committees that discuss these issues, and there's not a lot of action flowing from the talk. The goodwill is there, but the operationalisation of the implementation of those outcomes is not what's flowing out. In fact, our committees are not represented with people who are in positions within our colleges and leadership roles to affect change and make sure actions and decisions of the university are actually implemented through the university. So we'll see how that goes as that flows along. The second comment as Deputy Vice Chancellor Research I would make is it's timely in that this morning I submitted this university's response to Warwick Anderson, who asked for comments in the universities regarding how they should strengthen the NHMRC's administering policies. And like Linda, when Warwick did that survey, with some trepidation, we had an announcement that only half of the administering universities thought that that survey was important enough to respond to. And you think quickly, please God, I hope the ANU responded to it, which we did, and we were rated as good, which sounds good on the list of policies, but I was somewhat surprised, and given that two were outstanding, there was a cluster in the middle and lower, and Warwick indeed is consulting on the criteria that we used, and in speaking with our female researchers, particularly in health and medical research, their experience and their input into that process, again, is quite patchy in the organisation. So I think the ANU is watch this space. We have enormous goodwill. We have deans who want to be engaged and don't quite know how to go about that. And again, the Vice Chancellor is committed to put in place programs and bring in external support to assist people in building, ensuring we get representative fields for selection appointments, and make sure we use skills from outside the university to educate people and bring on board best practice in the sector into the university.
Thanks, Margaret. And I think the points you make around it is of leadership. If the leader of the organisation doesn't care about it, nothing will change. So it's great to see Ian stepping up on that. But the other thing is you can have the best policies in the world if they're not lived on the ground. And I found that very much in the pregnancy inquiry. What I found was you were worse off in a large organisation in terms of discrimination on the basis of pregnancy and return to work, which I thought was a counterintuitive finding. But it actually told me that you have the best policies in the world, which many large organisations do, but they're not brought to light in people's lives. So that's a good point. Megan.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth, and thanks to Steve and Ryan for co-chairs and sessions. It's both incredibly important, but also timely. Elizabeth, your leadership of this issue, which is Australia in this area. I think the most important thing is recognising that this is an organisational issue. A side issue, it's an issue of some people, it's not. It's an organisational issue exactly the same way that safety is an organisational issue, that staff health is an organisational issue, so is it needs to be included. And also it's a performance issue. I know that our teams will not be able to do this in the world if they are not the most diverse and it's an enormous amount of research to go. So it's about having the best teams. In terms of where we're at, it was interesting your comment incident that you about after chain of its voice of words. We actually started to tackle this from the top. A lot of our borders are diverse group, but we are not at the level we need to be of the statistically diverse although our board leaders, my leadership team is focusing diverse at nearly 1%. Which is not enough for an organisation that operates in 80 countries. We want to expand internationally. So that's really important, and we needed to do that quite quickly rather than wait 4 years for that to change. In terms of our organisation, 26% of our researchers are women, and some 33% are linguistically diverse. And yet our leadership in the middle of the organisation does not represent that, nor do we think that we achieve what we want to achieve in terms of the diversity of our teams in the leadership. We need to see the leadership roles in some cases in charge of areas. So we are not where we need to be. We recognise that, and we report on that in our annual report as well. So that's the hard piece for us, and we are definitely working on that. The strategy follows in our chapters of change, but fingers crossed, because we're currently a finalist with 6 other companies at the moment in that area. But we're really committed to this, and we've learned that safety in 5 to 10 year strategy. We've learned that in the aspects of our health. We have to have a full top-to-bottom strategy and be exactly the same as what we're doing now with diversity and inclusion. And that strategy is everything from leadership to training to policy and procedures. We still have barriers that are fully embedded in our enterprise, fully embedded. And of course, measuring and monitoring, which might be I do want to address the question of to target or not to target. Because I've lived this journey emotionally, personally, I come from the mining industry, and I've even in my own head as a leader, I've gone all the way through it to let me share where we're at now. We absolutely recognise that we are not where we need to be in some of our senior research leadership roles. And one of the aspects is we must address the feedback leaders, because they will be the leaders in the next few years going into it. So it's not, it's one of the elements, and so we have actually recently put in place a target for our moving roles, which is really the place where you get on training for 20% gender diversity and 20% culturally diverse. And it's really fascinating to having put in a target for the first time in CSIRO, I have to say, has really made this issue real for me. Secondly, and I've been in that, concept where we could actually in one team set a target that 50% of all the hires would be diverse. And it seemed that difficult. So we weren't challenging so much the status quo, but we were still thinking about really good. And in 5 years, we managed to fundamentally shift demographic actually performance. So I have had experience of setting targets. I know they're difficult, I know they're emotional, but I'm also learning as a leader that they are actually vital. I have no problems setting targets for staff, not at all. I have no problems setting targets for staff, but we will have no problems setting targets. It makes it real, and I have to say, we've learned that all of those organisational changes, it needs to get real, and I have to say, where are we at in our journey of diversity and inclusion? It's just pretty real. So I wouldn't say it's, whereas the others are mature. Am I confident we can get there? Fortunately, it's strategy hands down every time. That's really bad news. Focus on those. And assure you your performance will go with them. Whereas if you focus on the performance, you get the performance. And so we've always focused on culture. And I'm confident we can get there because the organisation has seen that as we focus on culture, we actually do. So the leaders know you can do this, they're starting to get confident. Staff know you can tackle these really big issues. And so there's a confidence that we can tackle this one through. So I think we'll get there. I just want to share lastly this one story. I've been in teams who've been right in the mining industry. I've lived personally through that. And one thing I have learned is when you've got 10% of any group, whether it's a cultural group or a linguistic group or a gender group, they're just going to survive. And I've been in a team group, they're just going to survive. You're not really shifting the dial at all. And it's fragile. What I've learned is when you get to 30%, the 30% of whatever group it is, whether it's women or whether it's cultural, they start to build a bit of confidence and they're prepared to call it. Prepared to have meetings like this, they're prepared to call it. Not quite there yet, they're not silent, and they're not just kind of survive. And I've learned once you get to that point, then you can self-go on beyond that. It's as long as you don't drift back. So I have learned that there are some fundamental milestones that are important to get to. So,
thanks very much, Megan. And I think it's the act of setting the target that's just so important rather than the target itself, because it drives a different conversation. And not only that, it does make crystal clear what it is that you're shooting for as well. I've just been up with Horizon, which is the big logistics rail business up in Queensland last week, where their CEO announced that they would go from 13% to 30% was the target that was set with the board's agreement, and he'd done all the maths around it. But it will require just a totally different style of working. And even 1 week on, the conversation has just markedly changed. He was telling me he ran some men's only focus groups, just to help men understand what this might mean. And their questions such as, well, are you suggesting it'll be harder for me to get ahead in this organisation in the future? Is that seriously what you're suggesting? What's your response to that? And, he said, well, actually, probably you're right. The thing is, it hasn't been for women for the last 200 years. So, that's why he's one of the good male champions. I do think that's so very important. But what I want to do now is turn it over to the audience, because we've had 2 days of looking at these issues, shaking them up, and I really hear a distinct desire to move from talk to action. So these are some of the key leaders that we'll need to help by lifting up the action and the pace of change. So I'd like to open it up to the audience for any questions. Yes, and we've got one first down.
I have a question for Adrian. Correct me if I got them wrong. You were suggesting that longer ARC rates will mean by definition lower success, because it's at the same product market, and that lower success will generally dissipate between short rounds, which tends to be the success rate is equally important. So we need to carefully think about these choices. So we've got some suggestions about what is going to work.
Right, so the core both ways in a way. I think it's about trying to really develop opportunities. So that we really fast. So there's always going to be a problem for a long time. And one of the really interesting things about funding universities, I show some graphs about funding 40 years ago and now. It's almost the same. Some minor things about it, but it's almost the same. It's a very, very conservative system for rocket convention. Very hard. Just got to keep pushing this internal vigilance again. For us, I think it's getting those roadblocks as a real very pleasing structure. So we've got a better awareness on our panels of the issue. But at the end of the day, the senior leaders of universities are running themselves. The reason both of those things are prejudice against women is the longer runs, the danger is such that the longer runs, as fewer grants are given out, the danger of developing the system, and the good best researchers in the system. Therefore, the senior researchers are very much a bit of a document.
I wonder if I could just sneak in a request as well, because I think we get brackets for women in Australia, as well as international. And the ARC, you guys seem to report on the statistics in quite a different way than we're actually
Yeah, yes. So I love consistency. Actually, I don't think we have across the country good ratio on women. You go on websites and you can look up the number of professors in the system. So definitely, but you've got no idea if this is good research. And because of that, and notwithstanding the UK production issues, this next round of EURA, we are going to be asking universities to report is the unit of evaluation. So a fine-grained discipline level, both academic levels and junior, so it's real good based on data things.
So that will be a good starting point. So will you be reporting that back to the academic and research community?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So without the data, it's hard to move forward. Can you just state the name of your name and your organisation as well?
My name's Nathan Hopkins. I'm the head of research and application observatory. So I just wanted to follow up on that question because the issue of research opportunity really is one where I think there needs to be a cultural change in that assessment. One of the recommendations that I've been suggesting for the women, to everyone that I mentor writing ATSE applications, when you're writing their track record, is the H index is a commonly used measure citation method, and the N index is that number divided by years. That particular choice of metric obviously disadvantages people who've had researching experience in other careers. So what I've been recommending people do is when calculating that N index to use their research active time rather than publishing. Now I've seen assessor reports coming back saying this person is trying to inflate their citation metrics by doing this. So could I perhaps request that in the instructions to assessors that the ARC sends out to all assessors, there's some guidelines around appropriate ways that people present their metrics that have been used in the process.
Okay, so again, you presented me with a problem. Because you talk about metrics and your astronomy community make some sense, and we've been asked in many instances, can we give out a typical search profile and actually what the NHMRC does? The NHMRC though funds one discipline area, the NRC funds something like 30%. This is an area with distinct profiles around metrics. So using metrics is incredibly fraught unless you've got a good normalization process for Europe. Which is good. And I mentioned you on a book for a year. There might be criticisms legitimately around the room about Euro exacerbating the problem. In some ways it does. Euro is a very specific exercise, measuring academic quality. I think it's a really robust measure of academic quality. But then it gets used by institutions in a narrow line, select staff without looking at the other dimensions that should be looked at in select staff, like university, and as an institution choosing focus, who knows, and particularly is differentiating.
So, so to your point is that those periods of inactivity should not be counted in terms of disadvantage. That's the general principle.
It is the general principle, but you might work for your discipline.
But I understand that point.
I understand, and there was a time talking about so a suggestion which we talked about back there is the Humboldt Foundation in Germany towards scholarships. They automatically at 2 years old. That's the starting point. Again, when I talk to panels in our briefing, I say, look, think about that. That's the starting point. Frame your assessment within that. Well, it's people that identify that. Women are predominantly girls, men identify as girls. Men with career breaks, relevant opportunity to go relevant opportunity. Because both the danger and so even the age is really difficult to do if you offer women. I think parents and that kind of thing. So we never.
I think you're preaching to the converted.
I know.
But I think my suggestion, I just sort of wanted to make, because I think you don't have to be prescriptive about a particular research profile and the advice that you give to assessors. You can be prescriptive about the way that they account for career breaks and being very
well, actually, here I disagree with you. Here I think the identifying the one discipline where a set of metrics is actually quite relevant as a measure academic performance. But you're thinking again of this idea work model, which is deeply entrenched in this astronomy. It's not applicable to humanities at all. But so a prescription that we could make that would work for astronomy, but not work for something that also necessarily. But it's very good.
So what we might do is take this conversation offline because it'd be interesting to find out. It'd be good if someone had questions for the other members of the panel as well. So keep your hand up if you've got a question for another member of the panel. Yes.
Hello, my name's Kate and I'm from CSIRO. I'd just like to remind everyone who was there 3 years ago at our first Women in Astronomy workshop. So the privilege of organising this together with Sarah Ruff, who's here, and Sarah Madison. And I've been invited with Naomi Griffiths to give a talk on what other institutes around the country are doing. And I remember they put up a slide on the Eisenhower Institute, and I mean, it was great. Everyone was drooling over the family-friendly policies that this institute implemented. And Terry refers to it as low-hanging fruit, but that fruit was juicy. And and so, you know, thank you, Terry, for championing many of those initiatives. But it sounds like 3 or 4 years on, for us in our learning curve, the focus is really now on the recruitment of more females and that promotion to middle management and above. So being a champion on many other family-friendly initiatives, I wanted to ask Terry, what's your institute doing in that space, and if you've got any stories to share or learnings for us?
Well, thanks for the nice words. We've got a very active gender equity committee, and of course we have a very supportive director who we're happy to support. Sorry, we have a very supportive director, so it's kind of bottom up and top down simultaneously. But anyway, what are we doing on the issue of hiring and promotion? We're trying to get guidelines rather like one of those recommendations that came out from the discussions before the tea break, where the advertisement is framed appropriately and not narrowly, so you know that Mr. X is Dr. X, male, is the only likely eligible applicant. We're going to require that people seek applicants across the board, and the hope is, and this has not really been practiced before this year, that there will be 2 shortlists, a male one and a female one. And if there are not enough women on the female list, this will be considered, I'm not sure that the process will be aborted, but we're trying to ensure that both genders are adequately represented at the point that we start deciding on who will interview and who will get to talk, and then from then on, I guess it will be narrowed down. But those guidelines have been issued, and we're in the process this year of actually living them out. So it's going to be a rather long time before we can say that it made a lot of difference. I think up until now, the imbalance in lab heads has been redressed simply by you, not by any sort of systematic, well-documented process. But I think, just to sort of add to one point that I touched on earlier, one thing that worries us is when Doug Hilton steps down as director, we get some new unsympathetic director, everything slips back again. Because I've actually seen that happen with department chairs and vice chancellors. So we're hoping that we can get guidelines that are approved by the board that are essentially written in stone as the way the operation, the way the institute should operate. Knowing, of course, that we still have to enforce them, and that's still an issue as well. Even we have wonderful guidelines making it happen, but if you don't, if you just leave it on the goodwill of a sympathetic male champion boss, then the minute that boss leaves, things could change dramatically.
That's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just ask you there, Terry, because one of the things Martin Parkinson and Treasury does is when they advertise a number of gender breakdown of applicants, of those who were interviewed, and also then, of course, who got the job. Is that something that you do?
Right, well, we've just actually required our HR to start recording this. Okay. We haven't been doing it in the past, but that's in the forthcoming strategic plan, if you're curious, and it will be happening.
Right.
So record keeping is obviously important, at a very, very detailed level.
Thanks, Terry. Yes, could you state your organisation as well?
Hi, I'm Rowan Gaines, I'm from the University of Sydney. I guess my question is addressed to one or both of
Megan, as the CEOs or the seat of your organisation. We heard from Elizabeth earlier today that you need people in power who are normally men to become champions of change. Are there any evidence or prospect of tying activities in the area of broadening diversity to promotion, or to becoming a better school, or to getting funding, or anything like that? Because we all know that you can socially engineer academics to do pretty much anything you want if you make it part of their promotional funding criteria.
I guess what we're trying to do is make sure that gender diversity is expected as a KPI, performance indicator for any senior leader, any manager. That all needs to be, the more you name it, the more you make it visible. You know, you look at that in hiring practices, we expect at least one woman to be on the short list. The argument is if you don't, you're not finished. Just can't get there. You'd be like saying, well, we've got everybody with this one, golf has an Indian. Isn't that interesting? And you'd say, well, somebody would say that's wrong. So you'd say that's good idea. But you know, you probably have, I think we also have to make sure that we have gender balance on our promotions panels, and we've got to be able to a lot of other issues. But our deans, our executive deans, will be assessed on the extent to which they are meeting their targets for the diversity. I guess the other thing that we have is gender diversity is just the first step. It's important, it's well defined, and it's equally intentioned. But we have all other types of practices that we have. So whether it is about gender expression, sexual orientation, culture, we really are every monoculture in society practices in diversity. So it is, I think, giving us information on how. And I must say, I have a lot of positive response from men at the university who are also feeling safer about talking about work practices or work practices, the family planning work hours, and for opportunities to learn their life work and not
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Brian, in terms of, for example, the performance I have to go through with my team to the board. I look at 5 areas, so that we have age diversity, so we look at time, both in CSRO and time on the team, so that is the balance. Less than 5 years in the work 5 years, so that you've got new blood into the organisation, and you've also got new blood on the team. We look at cultural diversity, that's another aspect. We look at gender diversity, and we look at network diversity. So network diversity is making sure you have what might look like a very diverse team, they all coming from the same university, they all have their networks back to the same countries. So we actually mapped that out. I have to say to this day, James really scored the highest of anyone at network diversity. There wasn't a network in the world that wasn't connected. But that's a really important aspect. Now, I do that with my team, it's a one-up approval. My team needs to be approved by the board, so approval. We have not cascaded that through CSRO, and we've made the decision that we should. So that each leader is responsible for making teams ultimately diversity is about these teams and these workplaces. So that's one thing that we're doing. With new targets that we're looking for our groups as well. Each of the leaders is having a discussion. In fact, I'm having those discussions right now, so that's a two-up improvement. It's my place, probably going down saying, as a team going, what's it look like? Explain to me why it's not where it needs to be, and what's the going to do with it. Each area is quite I don't think we have put enough emphasis on KPIs, so we're going to say KPIs like this. KPIs, we haven't had KPIs, but it was already built into the promotion, so it's review. It's not cascaded enough, so I think we're doing okay at the top, hence the outcome is a little bit top. I think to really address that middle area of the it's always through. Every leader takes responsibility for the management of the team and what they're doing about it in the long run. So we do it. But it will be absolutely.
Thanks, Megan. I just got a question from Margaret. Actually, I'm going to insert one of my own at this point. Margaret, you know, you're a leader in a major institution, research and academic institution here in Australia. What is your advice in terms of engaging male and female leaders or organisations who just don't see this as a problem?
I think it's finished business. It follows up the responses just given to Brian's question there. It's about the challenge we have here is embedding this and affecting cultural change in the organisation so that this becomes part of the norm and not the exception. You know, I'm a scientist, and so I'm a great believer in data. I think data can be simply presenting data at every level can be very effective without people draw their own conclusions from looking at data, but seeing statistics on applicants for rounds in a transparent way across the whole organisation and send a message that drives discussions from other areas of the university, say, but hang on, you're really what's going on here. These don't stack up. This doesn't meet the expectation. To drive a change in a conversation that is not acceptable in the organisation. I think, again, genuinely there are many male champions of change. There are many people who are genuinely interested and would like to contribute and see a different evolution of cultures in organisations, but are unable, don't know how to go about it, and that's where the leadership, where our role comes in, to identify and give them the tools to do that. And as I said, one conversation that has been had in the highest level in this organisation is the problem in some of our disciplines that are typically male-dominated, and where the typical answer is, oh, we've looked everywhere for the applicants for this school and there aren't any women there. That is not an acceptable answer. The question is, we've done everything we know how to do, we don't know what else to do, please help us. Yeah. And that is our job, and we're implementing programs now to bring external advice and say, these are the strategies you use. And ultimately, you would like to move to a situation similar to what Megan indicated, where if you don't have 50-50, the process has not finished and you continue. But that's a journey.
And that's a reframing, and the male champions are very big on that as well. They always ask the question, 50-50, if not, why not? Being if women make up 50% of the population, why am I not seeing 50% of them in this round of grants on the board at the senior executive level? You can ask it in relation to anything and it changes the frame of reference. And that's what we set out to do. So there's more questions. There's one there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a future fellow at the Australian Astronomical Society. Should I start there?
That's okay, just hold a little bit closer.
At the Australian Astronomical Observatory. And we saw yesterday research showing that science careers, female science careers, are being impacted by the difficulty in travelling once they have caring duties. And spoken this morning that flexible access to flexible funds to enable carers to travel to conferences, meet colleagues, can help that situation. And Matthew pointed out that we were looking into it. There are fringe benefit tax implications. Obviously, this is a difficult area, but as leaders of your institutions, is this something you've thought about? Is this where are you taking this issue? Who wants to
Can I jump in? Because when you mentioned that earlier, Sarah, I actually went back to our website, our rules, and indeed, hospital dependence is actually a good one for our so I'm going to look at that, and I think there is a good case. The difficulty we are giving away Commonwealth money to support research. You really have to make a case that bringing children onto the conference, having some care arranged that you deal with is for the benefit of research. I think if that case can be made, I'm prepared to consider changing it.
And maybe there's people in the room.
We also spend common money
Okay, that'll be great to share the case with you.
So one of the areas that I would say not enough, but we have a program which is the Women Strike Award, and it was for an astronomer who was forced to hire a marriage because at that time he was married. So from her own family, she did that to increase the issue and the cost. It's really hard to hide a pregnancy, and at that point she didn't lose her job, and Australia lost all its responsibility. Most of that is just so horrific, it's not really easy. When you have the really place one word, never forget that. And that award specifically for people to return to the womb following a child, and we provide funding for specifically for various I was just relating to my son, and that is taxpayers' money, but we have no business behind that. I was explaining to my team that we do now have travel groups through Hungary and Wednesday and I think we had a very pleasant conversation with someone around this question that
that's actually my
diary. It's actually deliberate.
That's me just hand back.
Sorry, if you answer your question, that's been incredibly valuable to breastfeeding mums to be able to take a period to work there and to attend conferences when they first return to work. So I would encourage them to look for using the ARC program.
Okay, and
just a very quick comment on that. That was such a good program. When I was director of the AAO, I preached it and copied the AAO. Now on AAU, I'm doing exactly the same thing. It's a great program. And I know there's a number of people here that's really benefited from it. And through to this.
We've got time for 1-2 very quick questions.
Hi, I'm Maggie Evans-Galia from the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, and I'm a woman in biomedical research, but I'm also co-founder of Science Australia. Something we tend not to talk about in the issue of gender equity and equality and the number of women in science is the choice to leave. So a study showed at the National Institute of Health of 1,300 postdocs that over half of the women, whether they were married or not, or whether they had children or not, chose to leave. And you need to think about this in the context of astronomy, because I think you're a male-dominated discipline, whereas my discipline has had more females than males at level A for the last 15 years. Sorry, I'm just trying to look through. And so we still have a major issue with the lack of women in seniority. So in my own department, we have 11 group members, and only 2 of them are women, and yet most of the people in the lab are female. And so there's clearly a disconnect between getting them up. But a lot of them choose to leave. What measures can we do? Because it does come back to organisational culture. What really can we do to make it more attractive for women to choose to stay? Who wants to take that?
I guess the opening question I'd say in that scenario there is, again, what are the reasons women choose to leave? Women can choose to leave because they're intelligent and have great other opportunities that they pursue is the first one. But again, it will depend clearly on different organisations. If the reasons that they are leaving are because of the culture, the lack of opportunity, the support to do research, etc., there may be some straightforward strategies or policies that are just vacant in that area. But again, I'd approach it from what's the evidence base there here for the women in those particular areas making those choices prior to making a generalised answer to about what they should do.
One thing I'd just say in relation to that is you can have the best policies in the world, but if you've got a culture which is not one that actively and intentionally includes women, then you will unintentionally exclude women. Because pretty much every organisation in Australia today, if you look at the heritage of the organisation, for the very reason that me consider, up until the late 60s, when you got married, you had to leave paperwork. That was a Commonwealth marriage ban. So that's the history of most organisations. which is why I think when I work with organisations, I say you have to set out to actively and intentionally include, because if you don't, you will unintentionally exclude. And for many women, that's about no visible role models and seeing, actually, I don't have a place as a mama or whatever it is in this particular organisation.
But I don't think one of the because it's a lot of
Okay, great. And we've got, sorry, there was one here. Oh, sorry. We're about equity. So.
Yeah, I think it's great that there's movement towards gender panels as well as there's applicants for jobs as well as on sick leave. But we've shown that we've seen the women studies that both men and women create female applications and female proposals worse than New Zealand do it too. So even having an equal gender balance on a panel is still not going to solve the problem of subconscious bias. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on helping us solve that problem.
Yeah, just comment on that. You're exactly right, and that's why we're introducing our unconscious bias training to all of us, because we may have also internalized some of the stereotypical thinking that we've been raised with. And we know that happens to any group that is disadvantaged, they start to believe in these stereotypical stats. I had a colleague, and she was a woman of Cree and Black background in Canada. She was a First Nations woman, and she taught with me, and I taught with her at the University of Manitoba. And she said when she went to university, she got a scholarship because she was very bright, very capable. She got there, and she knows that she lined up with her role. She got to the front, and she said to the admissions officer, "You must want to get me an IQ test." And she said, no, she asked her, "You don't need an IQ test." She said, "Why?" She said, "Why am I going to go to government of the original language?" She had believed the stereotype. It was a very painful story that she would share, and she taught that. Helped me to understand, what extent do we just internalize them? I hear it in the language we use amongst ourselves. I hear it in the way we overfunction, because we think we have to take on more roles than we do. And I absolutely agree that we feel a fear and behavior, because we're all human, we're tired, we fall into trap, there'll be a dynamic that happens. Especially if there's fewer women in the room who might not feel as confident speaking up. We really have to be very deliberate about identifying it, naming, challenging it, and trying to make sure that we really judge people on the merit. We don't have those things to them. The first step is naming it and
Thanks very much. I just wonder if there's one piece of advice, one minute from each panellist, for participants in the workshop. So when you arrive at work again on Monday morning or Saturday morning or whenever it is, what one piece of advice should people remember? Terry?
Keep fighting.
I guess I would speak at this moment if I could to women in the room. And I would say, this is going to sound simple, I would say, trust yourself. And really know that you have not only a right, but I believe as an intelligent, educated person, and you are a privileged part of society. We have, I think, an opportunity that we might squander right now. So I'd say, really be sure that you have an opportunity for yourself, believe in yourself, and speak out into the system.
Direct my response to people coming to us looking for money. Give you opportunity to talk about the relative opportunity. Use it. Don't get embarrassed about using it. I'm trying to condition our panels, I'm trying to condition processes. Take note of that, I'm trying to change our processes. Really focus on that. Make the space as good as describe your opportunity. There are areas there, don't be shy.
Thanks. I would say, particularly to the women here, if you haven't found your champion of change or your sounding board outside the discipline, identify that person and connect with them. And it's really great to see a lot of men here today as part of the sport, just dominated by female forces there. what stood me in good stead, I think, in my career is having had a person on the outside there to calibrate against the reasonableness, if you like, of my opinions, whether you are overanalyzing, whether that in fact is a big issue, or whether you're being completely irrational and they're saying, look, you know, you've lost it there, come back down in here. Someone outside, trusted, etc., but particularly if you're navigating a difficult area and working in a different culture, someone outside as a support person there, you know, a little bit different to mentor, I think is advice that I would.
Thanks very much, Margaret. I suppose just the way I think about it, I think if gender equality is my birthright, why would I accept anything less? And so that's what helps me to be brave, as Terry says, and to go out and connect with those who will help and sponsor and mentor me. So I think very much for women, that's my message to you. In relation to the men, and it's fabulous to see so many concerned men who've attended 2 days to really talk about this issue. My message there is, if we allow this issue to sit on the shoulders of women alone, we will not make progress, I can tell you that. It's a shared responsibility. It's one that starts with all of us. And for men to step up beside us and become strong, not just strong advocates, but people who will take action to take us to a more gender equal Australia, a more gender equal scientific community, and ultimately to have a global impact in that area. That's what we need. We need good, decent, powerful men stepping up beside us and working together with us. So it's been a great pleasure to be here today. It's been fabulous to facilitate the discussion, and I just would invite you to a round of applause for Terry, for Linda, for Aidan and Margaret for their great wisdom of this work. Thank you very much. I think, is it Brian who's going to, oh no, Lisa Harvey-Smith is going to step up. Thank you.
My name is Karen Sadler, and it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker. While people are moving about here, I thought I would just say a little something about the imposter syndrome, which was brought up earlier today. And I thought a lot about that, and I wanted to share with you that in every single major post that I've had, I felt like an imposter. Every one of them. And in most of those, certainly the ones that were transformational, that transformed me, somebody tapped me on the shoulder. Sometimes it was from the organization that was looking for someone, sometimes it was just a friend who said, why are you not applying for that? So I don't know how much that applies to you. You can reflect internally and think back. But I wanted to share that with you. That feeling, that ingrained feeling of being an imposter can travel with you for decades. But if you recognize it, that's the power. The power is in recognizing it. I was recently invited back to my alma mater, my first alma mater in Nebraska. And there were 2 talks to the graduating class, and one was from a young man who represented the undergraduates, and the young man spoke about how he came to university thinking, this is where it's at, you know, I'm really good, I've been accepted, he's not going to excel, And then suddenly realizing that there were all sorts of wonderful people around him. In fact, he was no longer at the top of the heap. And the young woman spoke about how she came to graduate school feeling like she shouldn't even know, that someone had made a mistake. But what she learned by the end of her experience was that it was the right place for her. So I think you can see that we all carry these surprises, and if you recognize it, that's the power. And if, for my own experience, I think part of the reason that I sometimes felt an imposter was because I was challenging myself. And that's not a bad thing. You know, I was a little bit outside my comfort zone. But that's a place to grow too. So if you ever feel that, if you hear that voice in the back, try to turn that around and say that you're actually in a place where you can grow and contribute. So that was just my filling in the space. While we were rearranging things, it's now my pleasure to welcome to the podium Lisa Smith, who probably doesn't need any introduction to this group. She will speak in her role as president of the Women in Astronomy chapter of the AAS. You know, Gloria Steinem was reported to have said on her 50th, was asked on her 50th birthday, "My goodness, you look so good, you can't possibly be 50. And she said, "This is what 50 looks like." Well, I think, you know, I hope you think I'm 50. But our next speaker's not 50, but what I wanted to say is this is what astronomy looks like, okay? All of you in the room, and Lisa as the example that we have coming up on the stage, this is what astronomy looks like. Someone who wears a hard hat, someone who's project scientist for ASCAP, someone who runs 250 kilometers as an ultra marathoner. That's what astronomy looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Please.
That was fun. Thank you. Gave me a good laugh. Wow, what a meeting. Oh my God, I love these meetings. I'm just so proud of this group of people and the community that has been built, you know, and acknowledge the people who set up this chapter 5 years ago. We've just grown so much from that first meeting 4 years ago. It was held in Sydney, and the diversity of topics discussed and the maturity of the group and its understanding of the issues of unconscious bias, such that we don't even have to have talks about what it is anymore. And you know, and also the number of senior people who are here. I just find all of that really uplifting, and it just makes me happy to see how far this group's gone. So that's great. So I'm speaking on behalf of the chapter for Women in Astronomy of the ASA, and I'm the current chair, but my term's expired, so I'll be off soon. But I'd like to announce today officially the launch of the Pleiades Awards. Remind myself to pronounce it correctly. And this has really come out of these meetings, this idea, the discussions that's come out of these meetings that's led to this award launch today. So the Pleiades Awards, this is the rationale. They recognise organisations in Australian astronomy specifically that take active steps to advance women, essentially. And we want to do this by encouraging organisations to look at themselves, you know, have a really good stare at themselves and say, what are the specific areas in which we need to improve? What are the specific programs that we can design in order to improve ourselves in those areas, and who are the people responsible, and how do we monitor, and how do we communicate those things to the people who work in those organisations? So really it's a framework for organisations who who we work for, members of the ASA work for, to show them the way and to bring everyone together in sort of a unified approach to moving forward from these type of workshops. Because we all have great ideas, we all go back uplifted, but when we get back to our institutes, how do we move our institutes forward and take them with us? So the approach is intended to be unified and not uniform, which was a good quote from earlier. I don't want to list a number of exact things that organisations should do and say, we're going to celebrate these specific things. I want organisations to actually think of their own ideas, look at their own conduct, and look at those things that are specific to the organisational culture, to the organisational rules or ways of doing things, and then tailor those sort of ideas around what the organisation needs. So it's not a uniform approach, but it's unified in the sense that we're all pushing towards the same direction. Now, there's been a huge number of people who have helped to develop the idea for these awards. These are some of them. These are the current members of the steering committee of the chapter. There are also, that's a terrible picture of Andrew, but it's the only one available. I'm not going to apologise. It doesn't have a sensible picture on the internet. And these people as well. So these people are not current members officially of the steering committee, but they include people like Kate Chow, who helped with the wording, the design of the wording of the awards, and previous members of the steering committee, and of course Sarah Madison, who was essentially the person who set up the chapter and done amazing work in demographics. And I salute you for everything you've done and continue to do. And Florence Ewan as well at CAS for organising the beautiful leaflets, which are very, very good and will be on your tables. So please take some of these to your organisations so you can hand them out even to your boss if you have a boss. If you don't have a boss, that's great because you're the boss. And you're the one who's going to be doing it. Okay, Pleiades. It's a group of stars. It's not a constellation. It's an open cluster. B-type stars, if you're interested. But in a lot of cultures, the Pleiades are referred to as the Seven Sisters. It's not just ancient Greek mythology. It's in fact a lot of Australian Aboriginal stories call this particular group of stars the Seven Sisters, and Nepalese culture as well, and also South American groups. So a lot of, because I read Wikipedia yesterday. So as you can tell, that's where I get my astronomical knowledge. But it's a wonderful name because I like the Pleiades. You can see them in the north, in the south, you can see them all over the world. But lots and lots of different cultures have identified this group of stars as the Seven Sisters. So this is the idea behind the name of the Pleiades Awards. Now, this is an organisational award. So who is eligible to apply for it? Well, we try and be as inclusive as possible. This is a list of eligible organisations. But you'll see there's a lot of overlap. So some people are a member of, say, for example, ICRA, and a member of Curtin University. And really it's up to people in those organisations, the heads of those organisations, as to which group they wish to use to apply for the award. So if ICRA wants to apply for a Pleiades award, that's absolutely great. If UWA wants to do it on its own and Curtin on their own, that's absolutely fine too. I actually don't want to tell people what to do. You're very intelligent people, so you can work it out between yourselves. If you do have a question, just contact the chapter, and we'll talk to you about what you want to do. We did have some discussions about this, and we would prefer, the steering committee would prefer people to go in as large a group as possible. So, for example, if you have a school of physics and maths, then try and get the entire school to take part in this, because the more people who are involved, the more people it positively impacts. But anyway, just work it out. The awards are in 3 categories: gold, silver, and bronze. Sort of follows the idea of the Athena Swan scheme in the UK. Who, incidentally, if you heard me talk at the ASA, there was a question about contacting them, make sure they were happy for us to use this, and they are happy for us to use this. So that's good. There's a lot of support from these types of the management team, and there's talk of bringing Athena Swan to Australia possibly in the future. But in the meantime, this scheme, I think, can make a real difference to our community. So the Pleiades Awards are open-ended. As I said before, we don't want to tell people exactly what they need to do. We don't need to tell you, oh, we want you to have 39% of women giving a talk somewhere next year. It's not something like that. We want people organisations to look at themselves, identify specific areas for them, and make improvements, and invent amazing things. And we just had a discussion led by Matthew people having great ideas, workshopping ideas about the types of schemes you could implement in your organisation. Just go for it, just be really creative. And it's deliberately open-ended in that sense. There are ideas for best practices. Some of these are on this slide, you can get them, you can click on these links later. There's things like the Women in Science in Australia report by Sharon Bell, which was very, very good. The Academy report, Early to Mid-Career Research Forum. There's other things on our website as well. And I think we need to update the website with a lot more examples of best practices so that institutes can get ideas and we can share those. A couple of ideas that came to mind. You could start with a diversity health check for your institute if you don't already do these things. So do an anonymous staff survey. Don't just say what percentage of women are there in our department. It doesn't tell you anything about how happy those women are working in your department. So, you know, why not ask women ask staff, are they happy? Are there issues? Make that anonymous and track your progress. That's a good way to track progress. Yeah, so reviewing percentages, demographics, I don't feel on its own that can actually improve things. It's an incredibly important part of this process, but it doesn't tell you everything. There are other things like compulsory diversity training, which I think works really well at CSIRO, from my personal experience. You can review attitudes of staff before and after that training to see whether the training actually worked. Did it produce any measurable outcome? You can have a look at the ideal worker model that people talked about. You know, working long hours, that kind of culture of, you know, I'm traveling a lot, I'm working a long time, this means I'm a good employee. You know, can you actually change those attitudes within the organisation? Training all staff on unconscious bias so that when you get you form a search committee for new hires, you're not just being dominated by a couple of people who really have no idea what unconscious bias is. That can make a real big difference. And nominating women for awards and promotion and that sort of stuff. But get creative with your own ideas. So there's 3 levels: bronze, silver, gold. I really don't want to go through all these kind of long descriptions. They're all on the web. You can have a look for yourself. But essentially the bronze is the entry-level award, and there is no reason on God's earth why you should not be getting the bronze award this time. You have 2.5 months from today, before the deadline, and every organisation should be achieving the bronze level this year. Okay. So all you have to do is have a look at yourself, identify several specific areas in which there are opportunities to improve. It sounds easy, right? Let's just have a meeting, essentially, and form a committee, diversity committee. If you don't have one, form one. Demonstrate credible commitment to implement initiatives during the next 2 years that will promote the end of the chapter and demonstrate best practice. So just look at yourself, demonstrated commitment to implement initiatives in the future. So you don't have to have already done it. It really is an entry-level award for this runs. You have to establish a team to identify, implement and monitor changes. So you have that diversity committee or something similar, whatever you want to implement. And tell staff about it. So you tell all the staff in the organisation. You say, we've had a look at ourselves, we've made these plans, and this is what we're going to do. Because that, when you tell other people, do it. And you need to provide safe avenues, ways in which staff can bring up issues about, well, anything really, and not feel that they will have repercussions. So that's a challenging one, but I think it's a really important one. And the head of the organisation has to append the application, so they have to be aware of it. And I would hope that in most cases they would be the one leading the charge. And I really want this male champions of change thing to come in here. I would like to stress that I think this is a thing the men in the room, in particular leaders of organisations, you should please, next time you have a meeting with other groups of similar senior people, talk about this award scheme. Say, oh, are you planning to you know, do the Pleiades Awards? Did you hear about the Pleiades Awards? Take some of these. If you're a head of an organisation, if you're a senior manager or something, take some of these and just give them to people in similar positions who weren't here today. And just pressure people in a nice way. So that's the bronze level, the basic entry level. It's essentially saying, have a look at myself, I'm going to make some plans to implement over the next 2 years. The silver level is for organisations that have already established these sort of practices, and the silver awardees will have monitored, implemented successful new initiatives over the last 2 years, communicate the goals to staff, make public commitments, in other words, share ideas and promote what they've done in the public to other organisations, so give talks about the things that they've done, and make further detailed plans to make further improvements. And a gold award is a very, very high level, and it demonstrates sort of a sustained achievement against the aims of the chapter over a number of years. You need to have implemented novel, high-profile initiatives that have had a broad reach, perhaps across a number of different areas, maybe even into education, maybe into outreach, maybe into other organisations, and demonstrated the tangible, positive impact of initiatives. We want evidence and metrics and that sort of thing. And also demonstrated a widespread buy-in throughout the organisation. So not just saying a couple of people have done these things, actually demonstrate that the entire organisation is bought into this, and that people are being trained, and there's vocal leadership from senior management in this space. So when's this happening? Well, this is the launch right now. The application deadline is November the 14th this year. So everyone should be able to get the Bronze Award this year. All you have to do is make sure you have a look at yourselves and make some plans, incredible plans, that are backed up by the head of the school or department or the organisation. The results will be announced around December the 5th, and then the awards will be valid from 1st of January for 2 years. If you get a bronze this year and you don't want to wait 2 years, you think you can get silver next year, go ahead, you can apply again next year and get the next level. I think there'll be some challenges with this. You know, it's not easy getting buy-in from organisations who really don't have the leadership, who don't have the culture, and are not supportive of these things. And I think that will be one of our greatest challenges. And in other organisations, I think there'll be such an enthusiasm to apply that there'll be such a clamour that identifying a single point of contact would be difficult. So I think a senior champion would be really helpful if you are a senior member of staff in an organisation. Tap the head on the shoulder and say, look, we're going to do this, and so-and-so is going to take the lead. Decide who's taking the lead and go with that. But I really welcome discussion and ideas on how to support people in organisations that are currently struggling with a lack of support from senior staff members in this space. Because I think there will be some organisations that unfortunately would not apply. So how do we get everyone to apply? Because they're the people we really need to help, people who work in those organisations. So, act now. You haven't got long, you've got 2.5 months to the deadline. But I think everyone should get bronze, as I said. Identify the lead staff member or the group. You may already have this all in place, people who are responsible for things to do with diversity in your organisation. But really, I want this was designed to be at a local level, so a astronomy group level or a physics and school of physics and maths group level. Set a meeting to read the recommended material, get people together. So that should be set really soon, because there's not an enormous amount of time to get all this done. And identify the areas for improvement in your organisation, and identify how you're going to monitor progress. So that's really one of the key criteria. Who's responsible for it? So I really hope this just provides a bit of a framework for things that you're already doing, things that you're keen to do, and a bit of a deadline as well, so we'll work better with deadlines. So really it's over to you. Thank you. Any questions? How can we get organisations who aren't going to apply to apply? And how can we support people in those organisations? You don't necessarily have to answer them. Okay, if you're in that position, can you email me? And I think a direct contact from the committee may be useful.
So it might also be useful to get those of us who are heads of organisations here to contact the heads that aren't here.
Yes.
Saying we're doing it and we've got people as well.
That's an excellent idea, I think. Yeah. So we really need champions for this. Brilliant.
Lovely. Splendid. Okay, thank you very much, and I look forward to December 5th. So we've come nearly to the end, and just call up to the stage the co-chairs of this lovely two-day event, Céline D'Augerville and Brian Schmidt. And because you know how much work and dedication people like this put into an event, I'm going to ask you to thank them now.
Right, thank you for the applause. Thank you also to our previous speakers. Thank you to all the panel members. Thank you for Elizabeth Broderick for making it happen. Thank you to the audience for all of you who came. It's a very diverse group, which is definitely what we wanted to achieve. It has astronomers, of course, but it also has people from other background, engineering and administration. And it has seniors and juniors, so this is great. And I hope next year we'll do even better with male participation. I think one of my reflections on this workshop and what we've achieved is to bring maybe more diversity on the table. Gender equity is, of course, the important one for us, but we started to talk about sexual orientation, about cultural background, about race, and I hope that in the next meetings we can broaden that even to things like disability, mental health, age, and other discrimination areas. The important thing I would take away from this workshop, personally, is the power of personal stories. I think everybody who was here yesterday was touched at a profound level by our speakers, the inspiring story speakers. And today, again, Elizabeth Broderick actually put her finger on this and said that even in our dealings with the highest command in the military, that's at the time when those people heard personal stories that they got it. So that's my takeaway from our workshop. Any other thing you want to add, Brian?
You know, I can't stop me from talking. A few. I'll try to talk and let my laptop settle down. A few things. First of all, I just want to have the SOC stand up, who's still here, so the SOC stand up. We got a lot of guidance, and so the program is a reflection of lots of good ideas from this group. Thank you very much. Give us your applause.
Thank you, everyone.
The LOC, who did a lot of the work, of course, to make this all happen in the end. Please stand up. So thank you all, and of course, I am sort of the figurehead here, and Céline, I can tell you, has been extraordinarily organized. I would get so much more done if I were married to her, Francois. Céline, thank you so much. I really do think you deserve the lion's share of the accolade for this. You've really put heart and soul in this for like 8 months. On the pulse every day, so that's been great. Thank you so much, Céline. I'm going to finish with a PowerPoint because I can't help myself.
There we go. Got my mouse.
So we always try to improve ourselves, and so, like last year, we want people to take a survey. Now, if you participated, you will get an email with this information. But on the other hand, feel free to write it down and go quick while everything's still fresh in the brain. It's about a 2-minute survey. It's pretty much to give the sense of what you found relevant and interesting and any great ideas that you have for next year. So let's get it down now or fresh, and that will all be put together for next year's panel. We found last year's survey very useful. This one's a little quicker and easier to do than last year's. So that's thing one. People have asked for the tricky situations. You will also receive this in your email. This was done, as I told you, by Kate and Casey. And so there's 25 of these things, and you can look at what 1,000 people's responses are. So that will be sent around to you. And so I think if you like it, she probably would appreciate a thank you, because she went through the effort to help me out and give us some new ones, which I'm going to keep to surprise you later on, maybe next year or years in the future. Alan Duffy is a great user of technology. He's pounding away on his keyboard right now. He has storified this, because one of the things we have to do is take the story of today back to where we came from. And this is here to help you. Alan has gone through and used everyone's tweets and the pictures of himself, put it on there, and pretty much everything you want is there, I think. And he has prepared a few slides for us to look. So here's the opening. We have, you want graphs for the statistics? They're there. You want to have little exciting moments that have occurred? They're there to tweak your mind what happened. Useful tips, the 7 deadly myths as told to us. So you can refer to those. Reminders of train wrecks that occurred around us. Science is a girl thing. And you should know that we did trend top of Sydney on Twitter. I don't know how we did that, but that's great. When I won the Nobel Prize, I only got to number 2. If you want to get there, there's the short link. We will also include that, but that one's so short you really can't write it down. So on that, I think I am prepared to finish up, but I'm going to give Celine the last word. And you don't know how hard that is.
Well, my last word is going to be thank you. It's going to be bringing everything you've learned today and yesterday back to your institutions. Start those conversations, continue them, and hopefully bring more people next year. Thank you.
Nope, I'm done.